My name is Margaret Blake. I'm 35 years old. I've spent the last decade in silence, not because I lacked words, but because I was trained to observe, not speak. I've worked in the field, led operations, and stood in briefing rooms with flags on the walls and secrets in every file. I've faced fear in ways most people never do. But last Saturday, I stood in a place far more familiar, and somehow far colder. My younger sister Emily was getting married. White dress, garden venue, smiles everywhere. I stood near the floral archway, the one I hadn't helped choose. My mother Vivian floated between guests like a senator's wife. She paused beside two women in blue dresses. Then, without even lowering her voice, she said, "Margaret, she's just never been remarkable. I was 10 feet away." I smiled. As always. My brother Stephen raised a glass in my direction. "Still doing that office job, huh?" He smirked. He didn't wait for an answer. I adjusted my coat, shifted my weight in the heels I'd once worn while running from gunfire in Kabul. They didn't see that part of me. They never had. I poured champagne, I clapped, I stayed silent. And then it happened. A black SUV rolled slowly up the driveway. It didn't belong to any guest. The engine cut. A man stepped out, dark suit, earpiece, calm like stone. He scanned the crowd. He didn't look at anyone else. He walked directly to me. And with a slight bow, he said, "Director Blake, your presence is required." Every fork paused midair. My mother froze. My sister gasped. For once, they didn't talk over me. Have you ever been dismissed by the very people who should have known you best? If that sounds like your story, stay with me. I promise you, this isn't about power. It's about silence, and what happens when it finally speaks. Please leave a like, subscribe, and walk this road with me one chapter at a time. Fan 240. What they never knew, most people assume you fall into greatness, that it comes through luck or connections or charm. But not in my world. In my world, you earn your place quietly through choices that leave scars instead of medals. I was 22 when I joined the agency, still too young to rent a car, but apparently old enough to carry a weapon and lie with a straight face. I trained in cold bunkers, read files that could end in governments, and learned to disappear from rooms, even while standing in them. By 30, I'd led 3 covert missions overseas, lost friends, buried truths, and walked away from a version of myself I didn't recognize anymore. But the funny thing is, none of that mattered back home. To my family, I was just Margaret, the unmarried one, the one who works too much, the one they couldn't quite explain at parties. She's in DC doing something for the government, my mother would say with a tight smile and eyes that always avoided mine. I never corrected her. What was the point in their eyes? If you don't have wedding photos or a mortgage, you're just drifting. But what they didn't know is that some of us are busy protecting the country that let them sleep at night. And yes, sometimes I wondered if they'd ever really ask, ever really want to know who I'd become. But they never did, so I stayed silent. And the silence became armor. The sky above the venue was soft. That pale kind of blue that makes everything look more beautiful than it really is. Even the lies. I stepped out of my car slowly. My heels touched the gravel like I didn't quite belong there. Not anymore. Maybe I never did. White chairs lined the lawn. Strings of tiny lights blinked overhead like stars trying too hard. Servers moved like shadows. Glasses clinked. Voices rose. My mother Vivian stood near the floral arch, adjusting Emily's veil like it was her own wedding. Her voice carried. "You look radiant," she said, hands fluttering over lace. She didn't sew. Emily smiled nervous. She glanced toward me, then away. Like I might ruin the photo. Stephen, already loose with champagne, grinned when he saw me. "Still doing that quiet little job, huh?" I didn't answer. I never did. My smile stayed where it belonged on the surface. He turned back to his circle, laughed like the past had never happened. Like I hadn't once pulled him out of a bar at 3 a.m., blood on his shirt. I kept walking. Step by step, the grass didn't even move beneath my feet. Behind me, I heard my mother sigh to someone I didn't recognize. "Margaret's got a good heart. She just hasn't figured out what to do with it." I almost laughed. Almost. But the sound stuck in my throat. Because what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that just 48 hours earlier, I'd been handed something most people would never see. A badge, not one for show, not for ceremony, but the real thing, director. The weight of the title still sat in my coat pocket. Heavy, real, dangerous. But I hadn't told them. Not yet. Not here. This was Emily's day, and I was still the shadow at the edge of the picture. The ceremony began just before sunset. The light was gold, soft, almost forgiving. It wrapped around everything like a memory trying to be gentle. The chairs creaked as people sat. The music played low like it didn't want to interrupt the illusions. I stood in the back, no seat reserved, no glance inviting me forward. My mother stepped up to the microphone. Her heels clicked like punctuation. She spoke about love, about family, about tradition, words chosen like wallpaper meant to decorate, not mean. She looked toward Emily, then toward Stephen. And to Stephen she said proudly, who just closed a major deal with the Department of Defense and still made time to walk his sister down the aisle. Applause followed. Polite? Predictable. Then her eyes landed on me. And to Margaret she added with a smile too tight, who's chosen a more unconventional path. We hope she finds happiness in her own way. The silence that followed was louder than the clapping had been. A few heads turned, a few polite smiles. I nodded slightly, my hand stayed still. Inside, something cracked, just a little. Then came the sound. Gravel, crushed under tires, slow, deliberate, heavy. The black SUV rolled in like it had a purpose. The engine cut, doors unlocked. A man in a dark suit stepped out. He didn't glance around. He didn't pause. He walked past the gift table, past the photographers, past my mother's confused expression. He walked straight to me, stopped, bowed. Director Blake, he said, clear, firm, calm. Your presence is required. Someone dropped a fork. Someone else whispered my name. Stephen froze mid-sip. Emily's eyes widened. Her hand trembled. I didn't speak. I didn't smile. I stepped forward, slowly. My heels tapped across the stone, steady, certain. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't the forgotten one. I was the storm they never saw coming. The car door closed behind me with a soft, heavy thud. Not loud, but final, like the end of a chapter that had been waiting too long to turn. The world outside faded. The tinted windows pulled a curtain over the gasps, the stares, the questions left hanging in the air. I didn't look back, not once. In the seat across from me sat Cynthia Brooks. Tall, still, her face unreadable, eyes sharp as always. She had once been my handler, then my mentor. Now, technically she worked for me, but rank didn't matter between us, not in moments like this. She didn't greet me, she didn't smile. Well, she said, voice low, so much for a subtle start. I gave a small, humorless laugh. One breath, no more. I didn't call them, I said. You did. I had to, she replied, already reaching into her case. We have a situation, and you need to see it before the press briefing tomorrow. She handed me a tablet. Cold, thin, standard issue, but the screen burned with weight. Lines of data scrolled fast. Too fast for most, not for me. I knew what I was looking at. Codes, coordinates, field names, clearance tags, all tied to a classified operation, Halberd. An operation I had bled for, one that had earned me the very title now stitched inside my jacket. Someone accessed the archive, she said, from an unauthorized location. I kept reading. My pulse slowed, then jumped. 3 people had access, me, Cynthia, and David Mercer. I looked up. David hadn't been active in months. He'd stepped away, quietly, cleanly, or so we thought. But the log didn't lie. His clearance had been used just 6 hours ago, just before my appointment was made public. I stared at the numbers again, then out the window. The wedding lawn still sat in the distance. The lights twinkled like nothing had changed, but everything had. And deep down I knew this wasn't just a breach. This was a warning, and I was already behind. By the time we reached headquarters, my posture had changed. Not by choice, by instinct. It always does. I stepped out of the car slowly. The marble steps ahead felt colder than I remembered. Or maybe I just noticed them more now. After the wedding, after the SUV, after being seen. Inside, the lights buzzed softly overhead. Desks hummed with quiet urgency. Faces looked up, then quickly looked away. I nodded to a few agents. Some nodded back. Others didn't. It didn't matter. My office was on the top floor, a space designed to feel powerful, but as I walked in, it only felt distant, large, sterile, like something borrowed, not earned. The chair behind the desk waited. I didn't sit. I logged into the internal system, fingers moving on habit, not thought. The breach was real, the access point traceable, the timestamp undeniable. David Mercer, his ID, his credentials, his name on a digital trail that had no right to exist. I pulled deeper, cross-referenced locations, flagged IPs. A pattern emerged, subtle but deliberate. The last ping came from downtown DC, near a press outlet, not just any outlet, Capitol Beat, where Claire Mercer worked, David's sister, my oldest friend. I stared at the screen. Claire, who used to stay up with me during field training nights, eating vending machine crackers, whispering about life after this. Claire, who once pulled glass out of my leg in Berlin with her bare hands. I didn't want to believe it, but the logs were clean, the timestamps were precise, and belief had no place in this job. I leaned back slightly, just enough to breathe. The silence in that room wasn't peaceful, it was pressure, growing by the second. And somewhere inside me something shifted. The part of me that remembered birthdays dimmed, and the part that had survived Kabul stood up. I stayed late that night. Past the shift change, past the cleaning crew, the building was quiet except for the low hum of machines that never sleep. I requested surveillance footage, server room, East Wing, high security, only a handful of people ever go in. The screen blinked to life. Black and white feed, timestamp flashing faintly in the corner. 02:16 a.m. And then movement. A figure entered the frame, blurred, hooded, careful. They moved like they knew the place. No hesitation, no second guesses. They knew which door, which code, which angle avoided the cameras. They walked straight to the terminal, sat down, typed like they'd done it before, then the moment that stole my breath. They entered a clearance code, my code. On my screen, the letters lit up like fire. Used, accessed, exploited. But it wasn't me. Either someone had cracked it unlikely, or someone still knew it. Only one person ever had full access to that string. David. I paused the footage. Rewound. Played it again. Slower. Still no clear view of the face, just the posture, the height, the way the left shoulder tilted slightly when they leaned in. That tilt. I'd seen it in 100 briefings. I stood up, pushed my chair back. The air in my office felt thinner now, like the walls had drawn closer. A knock broke the silence. Cynthia. She stepped in, eyes sharp, voice flat. "We've scheduled a security briefing in 4 hours," she said, "but you need to decide something first." I turned toward her. Quiet. "Do you want this public?" I didn't answer right away. She watched me, unmoving. "This breach. If it leads back to you, Margaret, directly or indirectly, this won't stay internal. You know that." "I know," I said, her voice lowered. "Just a notch. This could burn you." I met her eyes. Calm, clear. "I've been burned before," I said softly. Then I looked back at the footage and whispered to no one, but this time, I need to know who lit the match. The footage kept looping. Same moment, same movement, same cold silence filling the room. I didn't sleep. At 3:11 a.m., I accessed internal comms, searched David's login trail, followed the digital footprints he never thought I'd look for. Each login pointed to places he wasn't supposed to be. Encrypted folders, archived field files, names that hadn't surfaced in years. And one word appeared again and again. Halberd. I felt my stomach tighten. That mission was supposed to be sealed. Locked away, buried in classified ink and silent rooms, but someone was opening it again from the inside. David had vouched for those agents, had nearly died with us. Why now? Why poke the fire unless he wasn't doing it alone? I flagged an access point. East DC unregistered location, close to an old printing house, near Capitol Beat, Claire. I didn't want to say it out loud, not even in my own mind, but I knew where this was going. I requested camera feeds, 2 angles, fuzzy, but clear enough. David. Entering the building. At 12:42 a.m., no hesitation, no disguise, just confidence. And something else in his hand. A metal case. I paused the video, zoomed, couldn't see details, but I knew the shape. I'd carried cases like that before. They didn't hold lunch, they held leverage. I leaned back, eyes burning, head full. Then came the email. No sender, no subject, just one image attached. David. And a man in a weathered army coat, shaking hands. The caption, "It started in 2011. Remember." My breath caught, my fingers clenched. 2011, a year I had buried. Now, it was clawing its way back, and it wasn't coming quietly. 2011. Just saying it in my mind stirred something. Something sharp, something buried. That was the year everything changed. The year I stopped believing in clean hands. The year I first saw real blood, not in training, not on a screen, but inches from my boots. I stared at the image again. David's face half shadowed. Mine wasn't in the frame, but the memory was. That handshake, that coat, that man, I remembered them all. Back then, I was just a field rookie, newly assigned, eager, obedient. We were sent to the Arizona borderlands. Hostage op, high risk, no backup. It was messy from the start. The mission went sideways. One civilian dead, an informant exposed, a report filed under pressure, written in language that buried truths under protocol. David told me what to write, what to leave out, what to forget. I did as instructed, not because I trusted blindly, but because I believed in the chain of command, in the greater good. Now someone had found that thread, and they were pulling. I sat back, let the silence surround me. The air felt heavier now, my skin colder. The past doesn't knock politely. It breaks in, and when it does, you better be ready to choose who you really are. My screen flashed again. Another message. No sender. One line. They remember what you forgot. I closed my eyes for just a second, and the face of that civilian came back. Not a name, just a boy. 15, maybe 16. Wrong place, wrong time, forgotten by most, but not by everyone, not anymore. At 6:47 a.m., the secure line buzzed. Not a call I expected, not at that hour, not from her. "Claire." Her voice came through quiet, tense. No small talk, no delay. "I'm chasing something," she said. "A lead on black budget firms, private contractors, ghost entities." I didn't breathe. She continued, her words clipped, measured. "They're routing money through shell companies disguised as foreign aid, humanitarian fronts, but it's all wrong." I stepped to the window. The city hadn't woken yet, but the storm inside me had. "They're connected to a law firm," she said. "Langford and Hart." The name hit hard. I knew it. Too well. "Isn't that your brother's firm?" she asked, her voice slowing. My fingers tightened around the phone. "Yes," I said. "Just that. No more." Claire kept going, unaware of the crack in my stillness. "They've handled filings for 3 of the flagged firms. Paperwork, transfers. It's deep, Margaret. This isn't just fraud." I nodded, though she couldn't see me, couldn't feel the weight in my silence. "You okay?" she asked finally. I lied, softly, like I'd practiced, of course. We ended the call. I didn't move, not for a while, just stood there, listening to the hum of the building, the soft, steady beat of truth pressing closer, because now it wasn't just David, or 2011, or Halberd. Now Stephen's name was in the margins, and family was no longer a safe word. Later that morning, I reopened the Bureau's internal logs. My coffee had gone cold. My hands hadn't. I dug deeper, into past access records, surveillance tags, anything with David's name or mine, and that's when I saw it. A second red flag. 2 weeks ago, I had been in Warsaw, briefing a diplomatic team, secure location, logged. But during that same time, someone had used my credentials. From a different device, from inside headquarters. I stared at the IP, my office, my terminal, except I hadn't touched it. Hadn't even been on the same continent. There was only one explanation. Someone still had my old encryption string and used it like it was their own. Either David had never let go of access, or someone had cloned it perfectly, which meant skill, planning, and intent. This wasn't sloppiness, it was design. I sat back. The room didn't spin, but something inside me did. If they could fake my login, they could fake my actions, my movements, my authorizations, my choices. They could burn me from the inside out. Without ever stepping into the light, a sharp knock broke the thought. Cynthia again. Same stillness, same quiet fire behind her voice. There's talk, she said, not just from upstairs, from inside. I didn't need her to explain. Some believe you're a symbol, an image, not a decision maker, she continued. And this breach, it's confirming their fears. I looked at her, didn't blink. Then she added slower now. Silence carries weight, Margaret. Use it, or it'll crush you. She left before I could answer. And for the first time since taking the chair, I wondered if I'd already lost the room. By early evening, the light outside had dimmed, but my mind hadn't. I sat at my desk, documents spread, screens glowing, questions multiplying. Then my phone lit up. Emily. I hesitated just a second, then picked up. Her voice was soft, lower than usual. I read them, she said. I didn't understand. Not right away. The letters she added, Dad's to you. My throat tightened. What letters, I asked, though I already knew. She exhaled. A pause, then they were in his drawer, locked, hidden under old tax papers and receipts, dozens of them, from Berlin, Jakarta, Kabul, even from home. I stood up, walked slowly to the window. The city lights blinked like they were trying to say something I couldn't hear. He wrote them, Emily continued. After every mission, every time you came home alive, I couldn't speak. He said he was proud of you, that he told Mom, but she said you didn't need coddling, that you'd only become weaker if he showed it. I leaned against the glass, closed my eyes. He never sent them, Emily whispered. He folded each one and just filed them away. I opened my mouth, but no words came out, and somehow that silence hurt more than any accusation ever could. We hung up. The line went dead, but something else inside me came alive. All those years, I had walked through fire thinking I was alone, but I wasn't. He had been watching, writing, wanting to reach me, and someone else chose not to let him. I didn't move for a long time. The room around me faded. The air turned still. The memory of his handwriting filled my mind. Sharp strokes, firm loops, like he was holding in everything he wanted to say. I pressed my palm against the desk. Cold, solid. I needed something to anchor me. Then came another ping. Encrypted memo, internal route, flagged for urgency. I opened it, and everything inside me stilled. It was a leak report from a lobbyist, close to Capitol Watch, a known political arm. It named me. Not directly, but clearly. She's an optics choice, it read. Placed for image, not capability. Background needs deeper digging. Field missteps, possible cover-ups. Source former associate S. Blake. I stared at the initials. Stephen, my brother, the one who toasted Emily's future with one hand and texted DC insiders with the other. He wasn't just talking, he was building a story. One where I was weak, where I didn't belong, where I was nothing more than a symbol in a suit, and he wasn't doing it quietly. He was strategic, surgical, deliberate. I pulled up older emails, searched tags, cross-checked timestamps, meetings, flights, conversations I hadn't connected until now. Stephen had been feeding the narrative, and worse, he had the audience to believe it. I sat down, hands flat on my thighs, face still, voice quiet, not out of fear, out of clarity, because when betrayal comes from the outside, you expect it, but when it comes from blood, it cuts with no warning. It was almost midnight. The city had thinned. Lights turned low, noise slowed to a hum, but I wasn't sleeping. I was watching. David's vehicle ID had just pinged. Southeast DC, not his neighborhood, not his routine. Too far from home, too close to the kind of places we were trained to avoid. I traced the location. One street light, 2 cameras, narrow block, the Tarnish, a dive bar, once used by rogue contractors. A place where stories went to hide, and ghosts ordered whiskey. 10 minutes later, I arrived. Didn't park close, didn't go in, just watched. Through a cracked blind, I saw him. David. Not drinking, not laughing, not relaxed. He sat across from a man I didn't recognize. Worn army jacket, Faded unit patch, eyes too alert. They spoke in low tones, no gestures, no smiles. And then I saw it. A case. Slim, metal, unmarked. David handed it over. No words, just motion, smooth, rehearsed. Then he stood up, alone, walked out without looking back. I stayed still. Let the moment settle. Let it sting. Didn't follow him. Instead, I raised my camera, took 3 shots, maybe 4, zoomed in on the other man, that jacket, that patch. Classified until 2020. He wasn't random. He was history, resurfacing. And in that exchange, David wasn't just careless. He was compromised. And maybe he wasn't the only one. Back home, I placed the camera on the table. Sat down slowly, my coat still on, my shoulders still tense. I uploaded the images, enlarged each frame. David, the man in the jacket, the case, no logos, no traceable markings, just silence, the kind that feels like waiting. Then my screen blinked. New message, no sender, no subject, just one attachment. I paused. Just a second, then clicked. The image opened. A photo. Not from tonight, from years ago. 2011. I felt the air shift in my lungs. There we were, David and me, side by side, same uniforms, same posture, same exhaustion in our eyes. In the background, a mission board, Arizona borderlands. In the foreground, a file, open, stamped, redacted, familiar. And below the image, 5 words. It started in 2011. Remember, my hand trembled. That mission was buried, locked down. We weren't supposed to speak of it again. But someone had saved the moment, preserved it, held it like a loaded weapon. I zoomed in. David's face calm, mine uncertain, too young to understand the cost of obedience. Behind us, flags from joint task forces lined the wall, symbols of unity, of duty, of silence. And in front of us, the first crack in everything we thought was sealed. I leaned back, let the weight of that photo press against my chest. The past wasn't reaching out. It was coming for me. Just after 7 a.m., my secure line buzzed. Short, sharp, not a number I recognized. I answered anyway. Claire. Her voice was tighter this time. No space for hesitation. I've been digging, she said, cross-referencing black budget contracts with offshore movement. I didn't interrupt, just listened. Let her words find the air. They're moving funds through holding companies, at least 2, maybe more. Shell firms registered in the Caymans. She paused, then dropped the name. Langford and Hart. My breath caught. That's Stephen's firm, she added, quieter now. Or at least one he's connected to. I turned away from the window, closed my eyes briefly. They've been masking defense bids, disguised as logistics. Aid programs? Humanitarian shipments? She continued. I heard her shuffle papers on the other end. Her voice grew more certain. This is deeper than I thought, Margaret. It's not just mismanagement. It's deliberate, layered, hidden in plain sight. I nodded, though she couldn't see. They're using clean fronts, she said, to fund something dirty. I forced my voice steady. That's serious. I know, she replied, then softer. Are you okay? I lied again. Yes. After the call ended, I stood still for a long time. No movement, no thought. Just a quiet storm building inside me, because now the trail wasn't cold. It was burning hot and running straight through my family tree, and whatever came next would not be gentle. I didn't sit. I couldn't. Instead, I walked the length of my office twice. Then again, like movement might help me think. It didn't. So I turned back to the screen, pulled up system logs, dated entries, activity charts. I wasn't just looking for David anymore. I was looking for anything. Anything strange, out of place, quietly wrong. And then I found it. A log entry from 2 weeks ago, filed under my name, but I hadn't filed anything. It was tied to a channel, high clearance, buried 3 levels deep, flagged red, accessed from my device. At a time I was nowhere near it. I stared, let the numbers settle, let the implications rise. Someone wasn't just impersonating me, they were working through me, from the inside out. Either David still had pieces of my encryption, or someone else had built a perfect copy. Either way, this wasn't just about blame, it was a setup. I traced the IP, partial match to a contractor zone near Langley, unregistered, but familiar. I knew that building. I knew its silence. Too many ghosts inside. Then another flag appeared. System auto alert. Triggered by unusual access from a foreign node. Same time frame. Same channel. They weren't just inside the walls now. They were tapping the foundation. And if I didn't act soon, there might be nothing left to stand on. The knock came just after 9, not loud, not rushed, just firm enough to let me know it wasn't going away. I opened the door. Cynthia. Same trench coat, same calm, but something behind her eyes had shifted. She stepped in without waiting, closed the door quietly behind her. There's pressure, she said, not from the outside, from within. I didn't respond. She placed a folder on my desk, neatly, deliberately, the kind of gesture that says, read carefully. I opened it. Internal whispers, concerns, questions, notes from closed-door conversations I hadn't been invited to. Is she compromised? Too close to the breach? Too quiet for too long? I closed the file, looked up. Cynthia's voice was softer now, but it cut just the same. They're wondering if you were placed here for optics, not operations. I said nothing. She continued. There's a hearing scheduled, preliminary. They're not calling it an inquiry yet, but the word's been used. I leaned back slightly, felt the edge of the chair against my spine. And Stephen? I asked. Her lips tightened. He's not named, but the firm is. Langford and Hart. I looked past her. Out the window, the sky had turned pale, like the sun couldn't decide whether to show up. Then she said something I didn't expect. I didn't defend you. I turned back, met her eyes. I sat there. I didn't speak. I didn't push back. Silence stretched between us. Thin, sharp. She added, it wasn't out of doubt. It was protocol. I nodded once, slowly, then said quietly, protocol doesn't feel like much when the ground's shifting under you. She didn't answer. And maybe that was answer enough. That night, I didn't go back to my apartment. I went somewhere quieter. The old Harrison house. 2 stories, faded porch, a mailbox that still creaked when opened. Emily had called earlier, said, just come, just for a moment. I almost didn't, but something in her voice felt different. When I stepped inside, the room was full. Vivian, Robert, Stephen, all there. No wine, no music, no smiles. Emily stood near the fireplace, a small wooden box in her hands. I found these, she said, in Dad's drawer. She placed the box on the table, opened the lid. Inside letters, stacks of them, all addressed to me, none of them mailed. I reached in, took one, read the date. March 12, 2014, Kabul. I unfolded it slowly, recognized his handwriting immediately. Neat, straight, unshaken. You made it back again? I watched the news. They don't know what you really did out there, but I do. And I'm proud of you, even if I can't always say it out loud. My hand stilled. Emily stepped closer. He wrote one after every mission, sometimes more. Mom said you didn't need them, that it would make you soft. I looked at Vivian. She didn't meet my eyes. Robert spoke instead. Quiet, like dust settling. I should have sent them. I should have told you. The words didn't sting. They sank. Deep. I thought staying silent made us stronger, he added. But I see now. It only made you walk alone. I didn't speak, didn't trust my voice, so I just folded the letter and held it in my hand like it weighed everything I had carried, because in a way it did. I didn't stay long at the house. Too many words unsaid, too many years folded into silence. But before I left, my phone lit up. Cynthia. Her voice was clear, steady, no preamble. We just found something. I stepped outside. The wind picked up, leaves scraped across the sidewalk like they were trying to get away. There's been a transfer, she said. Recent, quiet, from a defense-linked shell company. I didn't speak, just listened. To a private security fund in the Caymans, she continued. It's been masked under humanitarian logistics. I felt my pulse slow, my breath catch. And the sender, I asked. A pause, then listed attorney of record. Initials M.H. My chest tightened. Stephen, Cynthia didn't say more. She didn't have to. The dots were connecting themselves now, one file at a time, one shadow at a time. And suddenly it wasn't about David, or even the breach. It was about what was buried deeper, the operations, the money, the manipulation, and the people closest to me carrying the matches while I stood in the smoke. I walked toward my car slowly, the box of letters still in my hand, the past heavier than ever, because now I had the motive, I had the link, and soon I'd have the proof. But proof doesn't always bring peace. Sometimes it brings war, the kind you can't walk away from. It was just past 10 p.m. The streets near Capitol Beat were quiet. Too quiet. I parked 2 blocks away, walked the rest. No lights, just the hum of the city trying to sleep. Claire was waiting, beneath a broken street lamp that flickered every few seconds. Her coat was half-buttoned, her eyes tired but alert. She didn't greet me, just handed over a flash drive. "You're not going to like what's on it," she said. I didn't ask questions, not yet. I took the drive, clenched it like it might disappear if I let go. She hesitated. "Langford and Hart isn't just facilitating," she added. "They're coordinating with someone embedded inside." Inside where I asked. "The summit," she said. "Riyadh's Strategic Defense Summit, 3 years in a row." I frowned. "That's restricted. Military access only," she nodded slowly. "Exactly." I stared at her. My voice dropped. "Who?" She met my eyes. "Gerald Langston. Your brother's senior partner." The name hit like glass. Cold, clean, cutting. Claire continued. "He's not even cleared, but the badge log shows he was present 3 times, most recently last month." I took a breath, then another, but it didn't help. Then she handed me one more thing. A file, audio. She didn't explain, just said, "Play it." I pressed the button. Static, then a voice. Male, calm, measured, almost bored. "Director Blake won't sit in that chair for long, not if everything goes as planned." The recording ended. Silence fell, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy and loud, and full of something I hadn't felt in years. Threat, real, and closing in. I drove home in silence. The city around me blurred, signals flickered, headlights passed like ghosts. When I reached my apartment, I didn't turn on the lights, I just sat. The flash drive lay on the table, still unopened, but its weight had already settled in the room. I powered up the bureau's terminal. Isolated system. No network bridge, no one could trace what I was about to see. The files opened slowly, layer by layer. Email threads, bank transfers, travel records, each one tighter than the last, each one tracing back to the same names, Langford, Hart, Langston, and then Stephen. I paused, let the screen glow, let my breathing slow. One transfer in particular caught my eye. Mid-2018, right after the Berlin operation, an entity linked to Langford and Hart had moved funds, disguised as infrastructure aid, but the funds were rerouted through 3 countries and landed in a Cayman account. Same account flagged last week by Cynthia. I dug deeper, more names, more dates, and one connection that chilled me. Prague 2019, a raid I had led, clean on paper, but now tied to a shell firm that hadn't existed 6 months earlier. This wasn't sloppiness, it was a system, operating beneath ours, built by people who smiled for press cameras and signed documents in ink they never intended to honor. I looked at the screen. All the threads, all the links. It wasn't just betrayal. It was architecture, designed to last, and now it was cracking, not because they slipped, but because I came home. It was nearly dawn. I hadn't slept. Didn't even try. The files were still open, the drive still warm, the truth now far too loud to ignore. Then came the sound. My door. Not a knock, not a bell, just the creak of old hinges. I turned. Vivian, standing there, uninvited, perfectly composed, dressed like she'd planned this. She walked in, no hesitation, and dropped a manila envelope on my desk. It landed flat, but it echoed. I didn't touch it. Not yet. She folded her arms. Her voice was sharp, controlled. "You think you're better than us?" she asked. Walking around like your choices were righteous, I opened the envelope. Slowly, carefully. Inside a job offer, years old, crisp, Ascend Global Security, 7-figure salary, fast track to private power. I remembered turning it down without regret. But clearly, she hadn't. "You threw this away," she said. "Your father never saw it. I made sure of that." I looked up. He thought you stayed out of the private sector. Thought you followed your moral compass. He didn't know you had this. That you said no." Her voice cracked, but only slightly. "You embarrassed him. You embarrassed all of us. I kept my tone even. You hid it from him." She didn't answer, didn't blink, just turned, walked out, left the door swinging. I sat still, the envelope open, the paper like a bruise that never healed. Because in her eyes, I didn't just make a choice. I made an offense, not against the world, but against the family story she wrote without asking me to read it. By sunset, I had made my decision. No more waiting, no more hoping it would burn out on its own. Because fire like this, it spreads. Quiet first, then fast. I opened a sealed bureau channel, encrypted, untraceable, used only when official paths were no longer safe. And I filed it. An unofficial surveillance request. Target, Stephen Blake. Scope assets, communications, contacts, travel logs. No public trail, no external trigger, just a silent request to watch the man who shared my blood. The same man who toasted my sister's wedding while planning to ruin mine. Then I made one more call. David. He answered on the second ring, his voice tired, flat. "You want redemption?" I asked. He didn't speak, just breathed. "Be bait," I said. "Let them come for you. But this time, don't flinch. Don't warn, don't run." Another pause, longer this time. "I can't promise how it ends," I added. His voice came low, hollow. "I never expected a happy ending, Margaret." I ended the call. Didn't say goodbye, because this wasn't a reunion. It was a setup. And somewhere out there, someone was already watching, already moving. But this time, so was I. And the quiet halls of the bureau wouldn't be quiet for long. The next morning, I walked into headquarters early. Too early for whispers. Too late for doubt. The elevator climbed in silence, each floor blinking like a countdown I couldn't stop. When the doors opened, I stepped out. And I knew. Something had shifted. Agents who once nodded looked away. Analysts paused mid-sentence. Screens were minimized too quickly, the air heavier now, not angry, just uncertain, like the building had questions it was too polite to ask. I moved through the corridors slowly, deliberately, not out of fear, out of clarity. Power is strange that way. Sometimes it echoes. Sometimes it vanishes before you realize it's gone. In the operations wing, chatter dimmed as I passed. Murmurs, glances, the kind of quiet that carries weight. Then an alert blinked on my screen. Mandatory meeting, senior officials, immediate. I walked in, the room was still, 5 people. High clearance, clean suits, no expressions. One of them, Deputy Director Hayes, cleared his throat. "There's concern," he said, "about your impartiality, given the potential family involvement in the Halberd breach." They didn't say Stephen's name, they didn't have to. Cynthia sat beside me, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. The next words came slow, precise. "Effective immediately, Director Blake will be recused from direct oversight of all investigations involving Operation Halberd and its extensions." No discussion, no vote, just decision. It felt like exile, but colder, because this time it wasn't just protocol. It was personal, and they all knew it. That night, I didn't turn on the lights. No music, no noise, just the low hum of the hallway outside. Even that felt distant. I stood by the window, still in my coat, still holding the silence from that meeting like it might crack if I set it down. Then I saw it. A shadow moved under the door. Quick, quiet, gone. I opened it slowly. No one there. But on the floor, an envelope. No postage, no name, just plain off-white paper. Folded once. I brought it inside, sat down, opened it. Inside, copies of internal documents, pages I'd seen before, but not like this. Old reports, buried logs, a summary from Arizona 2011. Stamped confidential, sealed years ago, my name highlighted, circled, linked to a file that shouldn't exist anymore. Only 3 people had access to those reports. None of them were friends. Not anymore. The message was clear. This wasn't about justice or closure, it was leverage. Someone wanted me to know they could end me any time. I placed the pages on the desk, neatly, let the weight of them settle. Then I locked every door, checked every window, and sat by the edge of the room, not to sleep, but to listen. Because in war, especially the quiet kind, you learn to hear the danger before it speaks. Meanwhile, David was in motion, like we planned. He'd gone dark for 72 hours. No phone, no signal, just an assumed ID, a prepaid route, and a risk he didn't question. But the last time we spoke, he said something. They tagged me, he whispered. A micro-tracker. I didn't know until recently. They've probably known where I've been. For weeks. I didn't respond at the time, but that sentence, it stayed. Because this wasn't just a breach. It was a hunt. And David, he wasn't just the bait anymore. He was the mark. I checked the Bureau's secure logs, cross-referenced every ping, every flagged alert. Nothing. Too clean. Then came the call. Sarah. Her voice was cautious, almost rehearsed. Can you come to the old house, she asked. Just for an hour. I said no. She paused, then insisted. When I arrived, the room was already full. Vivian, Tom, Stephen. No one spoke, not at first. Then Sarah stepped forward, carrying a small wooden box. She placed it gently on the table. Her hands trembled, just slightly. She opened the lid. A stack of old letters, folded, dated, unsent. They're from Dad, she said, her voice almost breaking. To you. I looked at Tom, his eyes glassed. She wasn't supposed to see those, he murmured. Sarah turned to him, quiet but firm. Why not? Tom looked away, then met my eyes. Because your mother said it would make you weak, he whispered. That you needed to be harder than the men you worked with. He took a breath. But every time you came back alive, I wrote one. And every time I folded it away. Vivian turned, her shoulders stiff. She didn't speak, not once. Tom looked at me again. I'm sorry. We let you walk alone. We thought that made you strong, but it just made us cowards. I didn't answer, not with words. I just let the silence stay, because sometimes that's the only place the truth can live. I barely made it home that night. The box of letters sat beside me in the car, still closed, but heavier than anything I'd carried in years. I hadn't opened them all, not yet. But I would, soon. Just as I reached my driveway, my phone buzzed. Cynthia. Her voice came low, urgent. We found something. I stepped out of the car. The sky was already dark. Only the porch light reached me. A transfer of funds, she said, clean at first glance. But when we ran it again, she paused. I could hear typing behind her. From a defense contractor to a private fund in the Caymans. But the signature isn't random. I waited. The listed sender, she said slowly, is a legal rep tied to Blake and Rowan. I froze. She didn't have to say it. Stephen's firm. Again. And the initials on the transfer, I asked. Another pause. M.H. Margaret's heart stilled. It wasn't a maybe anymore. It wasn't even suspicion. It was confirmation. A thread we could finally pull. One that wouldn't snap but unravel. Send me the documents, I said. They're already on your secure drive, Cynthia replied. But there's more. I braced myself. We traced prior funds from the same entity, same account. It was active during Operation Halberd, and again, during Berlin, 2019. I closed my eyes, let the cold air settle against my skin. This wasn't just an internal scandal. This was legacy deep, globally fed, and the name on every dotted line was one I once defended. I opened the door, entered my home in silence, because from this point on, I wouldn't be knocking. I'd be breaking in. Back home, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I dropped my bag at the door, didn't bother turning on the overhead light, just the small lamp by the mantel. That's when I saw her, Vivian, standing at the window. Back straight, arms crossed, like a statue cast from regret. She didn't turn around when I entered, but I felt it, that thick air. The kind that builds before a storm breaks. Then she spoke, low, tired, measured. Stephen's name has come up, no preamble, no softness. I stepped forward slowly, watching her silhouette, still frozen in place. She finally turned to face me. You're going to ruin this family, she said. Her voice trembled just slightly. I didn't flinch. Not this time. No, I said. Stephen did that. I'm just reading the evidence. Her expression faltered. She wasn't used to being answered with truth, only with silence, only with submission. She took a breath, looked past me, then back. Please, Margaret, she whispered. At least, don't make it public. She reached into her coat, pulled out a folded paper, laid it gently on the coffee table. Didn't speak again. I picked it up. It was an offer letter from years ago. Ascend Global Security, the one I turned down. The numbers circled in red. 7 digits. More than any of them had ever earned. Even Stephen. You think you're better than us? She asked suddenly. You threw this away, like it was trash. I looked at her. Calm. No, I said. I chose service over optics, conviction over comfort. She blinked. A strange kind of sorrow crossed her face. But then she walked out. Didn't slam the door, didn't say goodbye, just left the way people do when they finally see they've already lost. By dusk, I knew there wouldn't be another window. No pause, no delay, no second guess. I sat in my study, the light low, the air still. Across from me, my secure terminal, its screen waiting, blank, expecting. I opened a sealed channel, typed slowly, carefully, an unofficial request. Full covert surveillance, target, Stephen Harrison. Scope assets, contacts, travel communication. Past 12 months, I reviewed it once, then twice, then I sent it. No password needed. My clearance spoke louder than any signature. It was done. At the same time, I picked up the phone, dialed the number I knew by heart. It rang once, twice. Then David answered. Voice low, he sounded like he hadn't slept in days. You ready? I asked. A pause. As I'll ever be, he replied. Then listen, I said. You want redemption? He didn't respond. Not with words, so I gave the order. Be bait. Let them come for you. Don't flinch. He inhaled sharply, then exhaled like a soldier at the edge of the wire. I trust you, he said, but I wasn't sure if I trusted myself anymore. I hung up. The wind stirred outside. Branches scratched the windows like old memories. I walked toward the kitchen, stopped in the hallway. There in a dusty frame, a photo of the 3 of us. Me, Steve, and Sarah. Back when we didn't know how much we'd lose or what it would cost to survive it. I touched the glass just once, then turned off the light, because from here forward I needed to see in the dark. The next morning I arrived early, too early. The hallways of the bureau still dark, keycard scanners blinking red in the silence. I climbed the stairs instead of taking the elevator. Needed the steps, the movement, the time to think. Outside my office, no one waited. No nods from passing agents. No casual greetings from analysts. Just avoidance. Like I was wearing something contagious. I opened the door, stepped into my office. The air felt colder than usual. Heavy, like judgment had already been passed. I sat at my desk, pulled up the latest reports. Then it came. A knock. Sharp. Measured. The door opened before I could answer. Amanda. She didn't smile. Never did. But this time something else was missing. Warmth, loyalty, maybe trust. There has been a meeting called, she said. Not by you. I stood slowly. Who? I asked. Executive review, she replied. 5 senior officials, internal oversight, and strategic conduct. We walked in silence. Down the hall, past glass walls. Behind them, agents glanced up, then quickly away, like watching a funeral march. Inside the room, 5 chairs, 5 suits, 5 pens clicking in rhythm. I sat across from them. One cleared his throat. There is concern, he began, about your ability to remain impartial. He didn't name Stephen. He didn't have to. Amanda sat beside me. Didn't interrupt, didn't defend. Another official leaned forward. We believe your family ties, he said slowly, may compromise the integrity of ongoing investigations. My hands were steady. My pulse wasn't. Then Amanda spoke. Calm, clear, sharp as glass, effective immediately, she said. Director Margaret Harrison will be recused from direct oversight of all matters related to Operation Halberd and its extensions. The room went still, like exile but colder, like betrayal but quieter. I nodded once, didn't argue, didn't beg, because when the walls close in, you don't scream. You start digging. That night, I returned home late, later than usual. The city had quieted. Only distant sirens and the hum of street lights followed me, my feet heavy, my mind louder. I didn't even take off my coat. Just walked through the living room straight to the door of my office. Something was off. The air felt disturbed, like someone had entered, then left without making a sound. On the floor under the edge of the door, an envelope. No name, no seal, no handwriting, just there, waiting. I picked it up slowly, opened it with the letter opener Dad had given me years ago. Inside documents, classified bureau files stamped in red eyes only, level 6 clearance. My hands froze. I flipped through them and my stomach dropped. They were reports from the past, from 2011, the Arizona mission, the one no one was supposed to talk about, the one I'd buried in the corners of memory, each page sharper than the last. Call signs, locations, field movements, and my name. Everywhere. I sank into the chair, held the papers like they might burn through my skin. Only 3 people had access to these files. None of them were allies. That's when I realized this wasn't a reminder. It was a warning, a threat wrapped in familiar ink, and whoever sent it wanted me to know they could end me anytime they chose. By dawn, David had vanished. Per our plan, he dropped off every grid, switched IDs, burned paths, changed phones twice. No pings, no contact. He was bait now, but not without risk, because just before going dark, he called me, briefly, his voice tight, faint tremor under each word. They tagged me, he said, not panicked, just tired, resigned. I didn't know until yesterday, he added. It's in my coat lining, a micro tracker, embedded deep. I clenched the phone tighter, felt heat in my throat, anger mixed with guilt. That means he continued softly, they've known my every move. For weeks. Silence wrapped us both. You still want to do this? I asked. Already knowing his answer. I owe you, he said. And I owe myself. Let's finish it. I didn't say goodbye, just hung up, then sat, alone, letting the weight of it settle on my shoulders. This wasn't about careers anymore. Not promotions, not power, it was about survival. Because the deeper I looked, the clearer it became. We weren't in a game. We were in a war, a silent one. And the first to flinch wouldn't live to tell the ending. In the middle of it all, a message from Sarah, just one line. Come to the old house, just for an hour? I hesitated, almost ignored it. But something in her voice, soft, steady, a little broken, made me change my mind. When I arrived, they were all there. Mom, Dad, Stephen, even Sarah stood by the window, hands clasped tight. No one spoke at first. The air felt thick. Not angry, not cold, just waiting. Then Sarah reached down, pulled out a small wooden box, set it on the table, gently, like it might shatter. I found this in Dad's closet, she said. Locked drawer, back of the bureau. She opened it. Inside a stack of letters, yellowed, folded, time-worn. She looked at me. They're for you, she whispered. All of them. Dad's face paled. You weren't supposed to see those, he said, barely audible, almost ashamed. Why not? Sarah asked. Why did you hide them? He turned, looked at me. His voice trembled. Because your mother said you didn't need comfort. You needed to be tougher than the men, he swallowed. But every time you came back alive, I wrote one. Every time, I folded it away. Mom didn't speak, just stared at the floor. Her shoulders shook, but her mouth stayed shut. I'm sorry, Dad whispered. We let you walk alone. We thought that made you strong, but really, it just made us cowards. No one moved, no one breathed. For once, I didn't break the silence. I let it hold me, like a father's arms that finally found their way home. Not long after that, Amanda called, her tone sharp, controlled. But I knew her well enough to hear the crack beneath it. We found something, she said. No time for protocol. You need to hear this now. I stepped into the hallway, closed the door behind me. Tight. A transfer, she continued. Defense funds, routed through a Cayman shell, tracked it back to a private security firm. She paused. The sender of record. Initials, M.H. I closed my eyes, felt the chill rise from my spine to my scalp. Mark. The final thread pulled, the name that had danced on the edge for months, now etched into the wire. We had motive, we had access, now we had connection. But I didn't feel victory. I felt the sting of betrayal, not just as an agent, but as a sister, as a daughter who once thought truth would be enough. I stood by the window. The street below looked calm, still, But behind that glass, a war had begun, one I couldn't afford to lose. Not with family in the fire, not when the only way out was straight through the wreckage they left behind. That night, as the city held its breath, I met Laya, back alley, behind her office. No lights, no questions, just shadows and tension. She didn't smile, didn't greet me, just handed over a flash drive. Her hand lingered for a second. Tight. You're not going to like it, she said. Inside documents, transfers, travel logs. But one stopped my breath. A summit. Riyadh. 3 years in a row. A name on the security badge logs, Charles Devlin. He wasn't military, wasn't cleared. Yet there he was present at the very summit, now marked as a target in the assassination plot. And then came the voice. An audio file. Crackled, slow, deliberate. Director Harrison won't sit long, the man said. Not if things go as planned. My blood ran cold. I didn't recognize the voice, but the intent crystal clear. They weren't trying to discredit me. They wanted me erased, gone, silenced. As Laya broke down the money trail's shell firms, Prague, Berlin, Arizona, I saw it. A thread running through every operation. They weren't random. They were tests. Pilots, and we were the lab rats, the ones left alive. We're just survivors of an experiment no one was meant to remember, until now. I didn't sleep, didn't need to. By morning, the decision had made itself. I walked into my office, found my mother already there. She stood near the window, arms folded, face tight as stone. You're going to ruin this family, she said. No greeting, no warmth, just fear. I didn't blink. Mark's name is in the records, I replied. Cold, even, final. She turned away. Her shoulders trembled, but she said nothing. I'm not the one who ruined it, I added. Mark did. I'm just reading the evidence. She finally faced me, eyes glassy, lips shaking. Please, Jane. At least, don't make it public. I said nothing. For the first time in my life, I looked at my mother not with longing or pain, but with quiet pity. She had confused silence with safety all her life. But I had outgrown her language, and there was no going back. Not anymore. That night, as the wind coiled around my windows, my phone lit up. No caller ID, just one message, a video file. I played it. And everything inside me froze. Ryan, tied to a chair, blood at his temple, his shirt torn, breathing shallow. A voice echoed, low, gritted, American. If you release anything else... He paused. He doesn't see morning, then black screen. No names, no demands, just a promise. A threat dressed as silence. I sat in the dark, staring at my reflection on the blank monitor. Not as a director, not as a sister, just a woman, holding too many secrets, and one shaking hand. This wasn't about power anymore. Not about reputation or legacy, it was about one thing. Saving the man who once saved me. And all roads led to the gala. Tomorrow morning, where the masks were beautiful, but the knives were sharper. The next morning, I arrived 20 minutes early. The gala hall glowing, chandeliers like suns, names whispered like currency, generals, ministers, contractors in polished shoes. Everyone wore masks, not the kind on faces, the kind stitched from titles and secrets. I walked through the arch. Agent Grant nodded, subtle, alert. At exactly 10:14 a.m. I took the stage, my voice steady, clear, but underneath my heart beat like a countdown. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. The FBI has launched a full investigation, eyes locked, forks stilled midair, into a series of intelligence leaks I continued tied directly to defense contractors. A ripple moved across the room. Gasps, whispers. Behind me, agents scanned the crowd, retinal sensors glowing blue, and then a buzz on my secure device. Short, sharp, warehouse breached. 2 hostiles down, 1 man alive, Ryan still breathing. I didn't exhale. Because just then, a man in a navy suit, mid-40s, reached for his lapel. Too slow, too still. Agent Dwyer fired first. Glass shattered. The man dropped. Chaos, screams. But I stood still. At the podium, frozen but firm, and at the back of the ballroom, Charles Devlin stepped back into the crowd, face white. We had him, but it wasn't over. Not yet. Later that night, in the debriefing room under fluorescent lights that never blink, I made my choice. I released a partial statement, not to clear my name, not to impress the press, but to speak, finally, truthfully. I was a rookie in 2011, I said. I signed a report I didn't understand. I trusted the wrong man, but I've carried it every day since. Silence filled the room. Amanda sat beside me, still, solid, silent. But I knew she was with me. They asked if I regretted it. No, because truth, even late, was still truth. And healing, it begins not with forgiveness, but with facing it all. When I left the building, the hallway was lined with agents, and one by one they saluted. Outside, Sarah waited. She handed me a folded letter. From Dad, "You are stronger than I'll ever be," it read. "Just don't forget who you are beneath the armor." That night at home, I placed the letter beside an old photo me at 5 years old wearing a plastic FBI badge, smiling like the world was wide open. I looked in the mirror. Not a symbol, not a title, just Jane. And this time it was enough. If this story held something for you, if you've ever fought alone and waited to be seen, drop a comment, a like, a share. You're not alone anymore.